It's been a frustrating few weeks for Ottawa commuters. In September, the city launched its brand new Confederation light rail line. And it wasn't exactly smooth sailing, with delays, service interruptions, and packed stations in the week since. With Hamilton, Toronto, and Mississauga all set to get their own light rail systems in the coming years, Ottawa's example could offer some helpful lessons for us all. With us now, for more on that, in the nation's capital, Joanne Chianello. She is City Affairs Analyst with CBC Ottawa. And here in our studio, Sharina Hussain, Assistant Professor of Infrastructure in the Schulich School of Business at York University. And we are delighted, Sharina, to welcome you here for the first time. And Joanne, it's been way too long. Great to have you back on our airwaves.
Great to be back on the agenda.
We want to show something that has gone viral in Ottawa right off the top. Sheldon, you want to bring this up here? This has been all over, trending all over social media. This poor guy, look at the expression on his face. He just is completely befuddled at the just teeming masses of humanity that have been lining up as a result of all of the problems the Ottawa LRT has been having lately. We want to follow that up by reading this tweet. This is from a fellow named Matthew Pearson, who writes on Twitter, "On an eastbound LRT train right now, the doors in the back half of the train refused to open at Parliament Station, so everyone in that part of the train had to stay on board for an extra stop. Doors opened properly at Rideau." There have been, well, what's the metaphor we should use here, Joanne? It's been a bumpy ride. You want to bring us up to date on what's been going on?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this is a project that's 7 years in the making. In fact, I was at the council meeting back in December of 2012 when this contract was approved. And, you know, like every big infrastructure project, I'm sure Sharina will tell us all about that. It was delayed. It's been more than a year late opening. But finally, in September, it did open. It was sort of a ceremonial opening, and that was super exciting. You know, people wrote it on a Saturday. It seemed very un-Ottawa-like. It was suddenly we had this sort of big city LRT with an underground tunnel. And then for the first 3 weeks, it was busy, but it was okay because the city actually ran a parallel bus service for 3 weeks, you know, the same bus service we've been having. Now, everything started to happen at the beginning of this month. At the beginning of last month, about October 6th, almost exactly a month ago. The buses came off, the new system sort of on its own, and then we started to see problems. You know, you saw that poor guy. That guy's like, I think, the mascot for Ottawa now. A lot of transit riders feel like that, gentlemen. And that is, we got both overcrowding because of the way the bus system was feeding into the LRT, but also, more alarmingly, we've had some technical issues with the trains that people just don't really expect from a brand new system. You know, one of our intrepid reporters at CBC here, he's been keeping a list. There have been more than 15 instances of delays of more than half an hour in the last month. And of course, when the train is delayed half an hour, the passengers, you know, there's backlog, and they're delayed a lot more than that. So it's not been what people were hoping for.
Indeed. Sharina, can you tell us, are these the typical kinks that have to be worked out in a brand new system?
Especially when we're dealing with a complex system like a light rail transit in an existing urban area. Absolutely. And in many ways, it's all about communicating expectations. The notion that it's a brand new LRT that's coming down the line, 100% of the time, it's not going to be ready for service, at least according to the expectations of the end users, at least in the first few months. And this is something that's endemic across many infrastructure projects, LRT just being one example. But that being said, and I think it was mentioned before, about looking at the idea that pulling bus service after 3 weeks and under this impression that everything will go according to a plan, I think that's a key lesson learned here. You always have to wait until the weather change, for example.
Right.
Or people are actually using the train to know whether or not the doors will in fact open and close when you otherwise want them to.
So if you're, excuse me, if you're watching right now from, say, Mississauga or Hamilton or some of the local politicians right here in the capital city, is the idea, I mean, everybody's excited when a new LRT opens, $1 billion, you know, it's a huge infrastructure project. But dampen expectations off the top, is that your advice?
I think it's more so about, yes, dampen expectations, but also being willing to communicate. And I think that's something that Ottawa's learning the hard way when it comes to being able to communicate with the private counterparty, being able to communicate with their taxpayers, but also with the end users. When we look at, say, here in Ontario, there are many different projects that are on the way. We mentioned that in Toronto, whether it's Eglinton, Finch, here, Ontario. There's a lot coming down the pipeline. So when we talk about communicating those expectations, it's more so about what do we mean specifically in terms of ridership? Are we likely to get to point A to point B in the time allotted? If with this train system, maybe with a parallel bus service, just until we can then raise the expectations and have comfort that we're able to then get to where we want to go, according to however the contract has specified we will get there.
Gotcha. Joanne, I noticed in your last piece that Mayor Watson in Ottawa, what do you want to describe it as? Yes, that's it. He's had a temper tantrum about the fact that the thing hasn't gone according to Hoyle. You suggested to me maybe should have had it a few months ago. What's that all about?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I've been on this story, actually, as I mentioned earlier, for about 7 years now. Actually, earlier than that, because, you know, these things take forever to plan. So 10 years I've been covering this LRT project. And, you know, in the last year, we've broken here at CBC lots of stories about issues that have been happening behind the scenes. To Sharina's point, you know, people did not actually talk about those at the city, right? So we had reports that there might be issues with winter reliability, and we're not sure how that is going to work out with the winter months coming up. We heard the issues that there were problems with the doors. There have been problems with switches, problems we're now seeing again now. But my big problem, I think, with the mayor and with the city's accountability and sort of governance point of view, which is, you know, the thing that I'm looking at, is that we went through testing phases. We went through a trial run, and this city accepted the train. We accepted ownership of it before I believe we should have. For example, in the contract, it's very clear that the system was supposed to run for 12 consecutive days as if it was operating on a regular schedule. And we heard this many, many times from the transit GM here, who said absolutely near perfect system, 12 days in a row. And in the end, it didn't run 12 days in a row. They had some repeat days in there. We've asked repeatedly over the last few months, you know, what were those repeat days about? What were the problems? We have no answers at all. And so I think that is the problem. That's where the mayor has to come in. He's not an engineer. It's not that he has to fix the train. But if it isn't working as it should be, it's a brand new system. You know, you do expect some bumps, but you don't expect the doors not to be working every other day, and you expect to be able to get to work on time most days. So I think that is the issue that this city council now is facing, as I say, from an accountability point of view.
Sharina, was it a mistake not to run those trains for 12 straight uninterrupted days, as was in the contract? That is part of what was part of the due diligence of all this. Was it a mistake not to do that before opening the doors?
Well, we have the benefit of hindsight to know that it was, in fact, a mistake in terms of being able to better appreciate what the demands will be like when we, in fact, run this service day in and day out during rush hour, in which many individuals within Ottawa rely upon the LRT system to get to and from work, to get to school, and to otherwise plan their days. So that is, you know, in many ways we can say was a mistake. But if you stop and put yourself in the position of Ottawa's legislators at that time, or even the contract manager, it's this notion that the LRT was late for, you know, several times and several different reasons. So the idea of trying to balance is maybe 10 days of continuous service enough in order to then allow this LRT to then get some real world exposure by virtue of putting into practice. So I think there was some balancing that happened there. Quite frankly, we won't necessarily know until that, you know, information comes public. But in the meantime, if you're operating the system in, say, for Metrolinx here in the GTA, and you're thinking about the Eglinton LRT or the Finch LRT, you're going to want to take a lot of interesting takeaways from this experience, namely that is 12 consecutive days enough? Maybe we need more. Maybe there has to be this idea of testing over different weather patterns. Ottawa has yet to truly see some, you know, winter weather.
Oh, the worst is yet to come. We know that. Yes, indeed. Joanne, can you tell us whether or not, I mean, I know everybody's disappointed with the fact that it hasn't gone according to Hoyle so far, but have you actually run into anybody who said, you know what, I'm so disappointed, I'm never going to ride this LRT again?
Yeah, we heard some people are getting cars. In fact, actually on the radio this week, we had a panel of riders. They're actually long-time bus riders. They used to take an express bus downtown. Those express buses are now canceled. They are actually thinking about pooling their monthly passes, the money that they spend on their monthly passes, which, by the way, are about to go up again in they went up earlier this month, and now they're set to go up again in January. So people are furious about that. They're thinking they're going to take that money, instead of buying a pass, they're going to pool it into a minivan service to drive them downtown. This is how frustrated people are becoming.
Okay, I may not be totally up to speed on this, but I think, is it going to be $3.60 for a single fare ride on OC Transpo come January. Is that about right?
It might be a little bit, that sounds a little bit high to me. I don't have it right now in front of me, but I think if you have a Presto Pass, it's a little bit lower than that.
Right, for sure. But I think if it was just like single fare,
it is one of the highest. It is one of the highest single fares.
No question. It's higher than the TTC, which surprised me when I saw that. Okay, tell us, Sharina, this is your business. Tell us, obviously, building an LRT is a massive infrastructure project. We've got one going in 100 yards north of the studio right now, the Eglinton Crosstown, which is still, I think, probably a couple of years away from being done, and is I think it's a $6 billion line. It is absolutely massive. Goes, along the ground, underground. It's a humongous construction project. Can you fill us in on some of the? Obviously, it's just happening every day here, and we don't even, at some point we don't even notice that it's going on anymore. What don't we see that's happening that makes these things, eventually come to fruition?
So there's a significant amount of risk, and this is the normative term that is used in practice, namely, building infrastructure projects is risky because there's the notion of not quite knowing just how structurally sound the ground is when you start digging. And in Ottawa, there were some sinkholes that appeared, so those geotechnical risk manifested. There's also the idea of understanding how transportation patterns might adjust to take into account that certain roadways are no longer available to stage construction. So that can add some time to your construction schedule. So that's a construction scheduling risk. And then there's also this idea of using a public-private partnership in many of these LRTs in which they're introducing a whole host of additional financing risk onto the private sector, who's going to then deal with the designing, the building, the financing, the maintenance, and possibly even operation in here, Ontario LRT, to otherwise oversee this project. And that's just a long way of saying that it's the idea of trying to shift that risk to a party that, at the time, the government thinks will be in the best position to manage that.
Can I say, though, like in P3s, though, yes, they do take on more risk, but we pay a lot more for that. In Ottawa, we are paying for a 30-year maintenance plan that is literally doubling the cost of this project. The LRT construction, $2.1 billion. Absolutely, the consortium building it has a lot more risk in it, but then they have a 30-year contract that's worth another $2 billion. And so, the city is actually paying more money up front, but for that. So the risk is actually, I think the risk is on both sides. I think you're right that governments think that it is less risky for them and in the front end, but in the end, I'm not sure that that is actually true. Do you think it is? Do you not think that the city, that governments are still taking a risk with P3s?
I think they're still very much in the situation of realizing that you just can't pass risk off and assume that's a turnkey solution and you can just wipe your hands of it. It is very much a long-term contractual arrangement that has to be monitored. And when, for example, a private sector consortium cannot reliably deliver a service, who are the end users are going to come back and point fingers to? They're going to point the fingers at OC Transport or the city in this regard. So there's still a considerable amount of risk that exists within the public-private partnership regime. And I think increasingly when we're dealing with projects of this magnitude that impacts so many people at any given moment, it's now a learning curve for governments here in Ontario, but also across Canada, to recognize that transferring risk isn't necessarily one in which you can just put a price tag to. You have to actively manage that relationship.
Well, Joanne, let's follow up on that because, again, one of the reasons we want to have this conversation is that in Hamilton, in Toronto, in Mississauga, the Huron-Ontario line, this is their future. Your present is their future, and we want to see if there are any lessons that can be learned here. Let's start with this. Public consultations, Joanne. Did you have many in Ottawa as regards the LRT?
Yeah, we did actually, quite a few of them. And, there were, I have to give the city some credit. At some point, they were going to run just tons of buses along one street. They widened that street, they moved some buses off, and it ended up being a lot better for residents. But that was an extra cost to the city. It was not part of the original contract, so any of these additions are extra costs to the city. So that was one area where the city did the right thing, listened to the people, but on the other hand, it did cost money. And, those consultations were so long ago, that for the project itself. I think now, though, what we're hearing is people have not been consulted on how the bus system works because, part of this, we're way behind the rest of the cities in Ontario that already have some rail. This is our first, I shouldn't say that. We do have a north-south rail diesel line, but this is our first east-west line. And we have all of these feeder buses that used to go right downtown. Now they're going into the 3 different stations, and we have all these buses sort of pouring everybody into these end stations. So you can imagine, even if there's a 10-minute delay, the backlog of buses at these stations is large. And so I think there's a lot of people right now, there's a big push for people to say, we want to be consulted about how we use our bus system in conjunction with this new LRT. There's a plan to expand it, but until that happens 5 years from now, how is this going to work? So can you please talk to us, because we use these buses every day. We need to get to school, we need to get to exams, we need to get to work, and we think we have some expertise. And I know tomorrow there's a big meeting where one of the councillors is going to propose just that.
Now, Sharina, who knows? There may be some lawsuits as a result of all of this. So again, for the city councils in Hamilton and Mississauga and Toronto, is that something you want to keep in your back pocket? Maybe suing the folks who, at the end of the day, couldn't get the doors open on these LRTs?
Well, you're going to definitely expect that there will be some form of at least a negotiation, maybe escalating to litigation that relates to large projects such as the Ottawa LRT. And that's on the basis that underlying a public-private partnership like this are very structured contractual arrangements that otherwise says, if this were to happen, then this party, you're responsible and you're going to compensate me. And it goes on both ends. That being said, in a project like Ottawa, whether the doors were opening, whether it was delayed for several years, there's this idea that there will be a negotiation that would happen to otherwise trying to reconcile who owes what and who's responsible at the end of the day. But also, you have to remember, this is a 30-plus year contractual arrangement such that you may be able to engage in litigation on what happened during construction, but you're still, in many ways, married.
They're stuck with each other for a while, aren't they?
For a while, exactly.
Joanne, go ahead.
In Ottawa, actually, we held back $60 million of costs that we thought were owed that the consortium should pick up because of delays. And because we're paying that $4.5 million maintenance fee every month, the doors aren't opening. Well, we've held back $2.8 million every month. So there are ways to do that you can sort of protect yourself financially. Now, we fully expect the consortium to actually sue us for that money as well. I'm not sure the end user, there is some taxpayer protection, but what they really want is a transit system that works, right? And I think they'd like to see more oversight. I think that's one of the big issues, too, in these projects is, yes, you give it to big technical companies and consortiums that build these things, but in the end, they are giving it over to the city. The city's going to run it usually. What oversight do they have while that project is being built? And I think that's one of the key takeaways that we have here in Ottawa.
Well, just in our last minute then, Joanne, okay, I'm going to make this awful pun. Let's just find out if there's any light at the end of the tunnel here and tell us, how long do they expect it to take for the thing to be operating tickety-boo the way it was promised once upon a time?
Well, I'm not sure. We're having a big update tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see what the city tells us. They have been, you talk about communications, they've been not great at telling us what the issues are. However, I understand from some engineers and other sources I have personally in the LRT area that it could be a long time because sometimes these things are complicated systems. They're subsystems that when they're not working well, they just shut the train down for safety. So who knows where the problems are? So we could be looking at months before it actually is perfect.
We shall stay on top of it. That's Joanne Chianello, City Affairs journalist with CBC Ottawa, and Sharina Hussain, the Assistant Professor of Infrastructure at York University's Schulich School of Business. Great to have you two on TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.